Welcome to the Black Narrative, where Black stories are told honestly, unapologetically, and with purpose. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and share this video, because every story deserves to be heard, and our voices can no longer be ignored. I'm sorry, but we can't just hand out cash to anyone who walks in, bank manager Jessica Keller said, her voice dripping with condescension as she pushed the Black woman's withdrawal slip back across the counter. Especially not amounts like this. Those words echoed through the marble lobby of Meridian Financial's Flagship branch as a circle of staff had formed. One young woman leaned over to her colleague, whispering just loud enough to be heard, "Yeah, right, she doesn't even look like she has that kind of money." Laughter rippled through the group as Angela, the undercover Black CEO, stood there, dignity intact, but humiliation by the second. What these employees didn't know was about to change everything about their careers, their lives, and this bank forever when the woman they thought was not deserving to withdraw her own money revealed who she really was. Have you ever been judged before someone even knew your name or who you are? This story gives the most satisfying example of instant karma you'll see this year. And if you believe everyone should be treated fairly and respected no matter what their skin color is, comment "respect" first in the comment section and hit the subscribe button now. This story began when an elegant Black woman stood calmly at the counter, her posture straight, her expression composed, despite being surrounded by bank staff whose faces ranged from dismissive to openly mocking. This was Angela Freeman, though none of the employees recognized her. 25 years before that humiliating moment in the bank lobby, Angela Freeman stood behind a different counter wearing a pressed uniform and a name tag that read, "Teller Trainee." Her journey from that first position to the executive suite is nothing short of extraordinary. Angela didn't come from money or connections. What she had was determination, intelligence, and an unwavering work ethic that propelled her through the ranks of Meridian Financial. From teller to loan officer, from branch manager to regional director, Angela mastered every role she took on. Along the way, she earned her MBA from Harvard, led record-breaking quarters in 3 different divisions, and developed a reputation as the problem solver who could turn around struggling branches. When she reached the C-suite as Chief Operations Officer 5 years ago, many thought she had hit the glass ceiling. They were wrong. 3 months ago, when Meridian's CEO announced his retirement, the board of directors found themselves at a crossroads. Despite Angela's impeccable credentials and 2 decades of loyal service, several board members expressed concerns about her readiness to lead. In private meetings, these concerns seemed to focus less on her qualifications and more on whether major clients would be comfortable with her Black skin as the face of the company. After a contentious vote, Angela Freeman became the first Black woman to lead Meridian Financial. Her acceptance speech was gracious but pointed. "I will ensure that every client, every employee, and every community we serve experiences the same level of respect and excellence, no exceptions." These were empty words. Behind closed doors, Angela had been tracking a disturbing pattern of customer complaints. While overall satisfaction scores looked good, digging deeper revealed significant disparities in service quality, certain branches, certain demographics. The numbers told a troubling story that the previous leadership had buried. Rather than relying on reports and secondhand accounts, Angela decided to see for herself. The undercover boss approach wasn't just a gimmick. It was the only way to experience the unfiltered reality her customers faced. The Flagship branch downtown was managed by Jessica Keller, a 15-year veteran with an impressive record on paper. Her numbers were exceptional. High transaction volumes, excellent new account generation. But Angela had noticed something in the raw data. While formal complaints were few, customer exit interviews told a different story. People were leaving, especially customers of color, citing poor service and feeling unwelcome. When pressed, most wouldn't elaborate, simply taking their business elsewhere. It was 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday when Angela Freeman walked through the revolving doors of Meridian Financial's Flagship branch. She had deliberately chosen modest attire, a simple navy hoodie on dark slacks and a face cap. Her natural hair was styled conservatively, and her makeup was understated. She carried a well-maintained but not designer purse. To anyone looking, she appeared to be a casual middle-class woman, not the CEO of the entire institution. Angela took a seat in the waiting area, ostensibly checking her phone, but actually observing the customer service dynamics unfolding around her. What she witnessed in those first 15 minutes was more revealing than 1,000 customer surveys. A white businessman in an expensive suit approached the entrance. Before he even reached the counter, a staff member intercepted him with a smile. "Good morning, sir. How can we help you today?" The man was escorted directly to a desk, bypassing the line entirely. Minutes later, an elderly Asian couple entered. They were directed to take a number and wait. No smile, no warmth, just a pointing finger toward the seating area. A young white woman in casual clothes approached the quick service counter. The teller chatted amicably with her, asking about her weekend plans. Transaction completed in under 2 minutes. Then a Hispanic man in janitor work clothes stepped up to the same counter. Suddenly there were additional questions, requests for multiple forms of ID, and a suspicious once-over from the teller. His simple check cashing took nearly 10 minutes. Angela watched this pattern repeat itself 6 more times before she finally approached the counter herself. By then, she had been waiting for 37 minutes, despite the branch being only moderately busy. 3 white customers who arrived after her had already been served. When Angela finally reached Teller Beth's window, the young woman's smile faltered. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone noticeably cooler than it had been with the previous customer. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please," Angela said, sliding her ID and withdrawal slip across the counter. The amount, $15,000. Beth's eyes widened slightly. She examined Angela's driver's license, then looked at her face, then back at the license as if confirming they were indeed the same person. "This is a large amount," she said, her voice rising just enough to catch the attention of her colleague at the next window. "Yes, it is," Angela replied calmly, "but it's well within the daily limit for my account type." Beth didn't respond. Instead, she turned and whispered something to Mark, the senior teller at the next station. Mark glanced over, nodded, and then walked over, positioning himself directly behind Beth, so he towered over the counter. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly, not directed at Beth, directed at Angela. Heads turned throughout the lobby. Other customers stared. An older woman clutched her purse tighter. Angela felt the weight of every eye in the place. The silent judgment, the immediate assumption that she must be doing something wrong. With remarkable composure, Angela placed her bank card on the counter alongside her ID. "No problem at all. I'm simply making a withdrawal from my account." Mark picked up her ID, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny. "We've been seeing some unusual activity on these types of accounts lately," he said, emphasizing "these types," just enough to make his meaning clear. "We need to be extra careful." "What types of accounts would those be exactly?" Angela asked, her voice steady. Mark ignored the question. "Beth, can you pull up the account history, please? Let's see what kind of transaction patterns we're looking at." As Beth tapped at her keyboard, another staff member drifted over. Richard, according to his name tag, leaned in and whispered something to Mark, not quite quietly enough. "Probably one of those money laundering or check cashing schemes." Richard didn't even try to hide his contempt, as he looked Angela up and down, taking in her modest clothing and natural hair with a smirk. "We just need to verify the funds are actually yours," he said with false sweetness. "You understand, right? It's for your protection." This humiliation was calculated and deliberate, yet Angela maintained her dignity, standing straight, voice unwavering. "I understand the need for security. I've provided my identification and bank card. I'm a customer of this bank and have been for many years. I'd like to complete my transaction now, please." That's when Richard called over Jessica Keller, the branch manager. She strode across the lobby with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in her life. Her expression was a practiced blend of concern and authority as she approached Angela. "Ma'am, I understand there's some confusion about your withdrawal request," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask for her name, just immediately assumed a position of authority over her. "There's no confusion on my part," Angela replied. "I'm simply trying to access my own money." Jessica's smile didn't reach her eyes. $15,000 is a significant amount of cash. "May I ask what it's for?" This question, one that had not been asked of a single white customer making large transactions that morning, hung in the air between them. The double standard couldn't have been more blatant if they'd put up a sign. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Jessica Keller stared down at Angela, her face a mask of practiced concern that couldn't quite hide the disdain underneath. The bustling bank lobby seemed to quiet around them, as if the very air was holding its breath in anticipation of what would come next. "Mrs. Freeman," she said finally, glancing at her ID, her fingers holding it by the edges as if reluctant to touch it too much. "This amount doesn't seem appropriate for someone like you. This bank prides in dignity, and we have a class of customers we serve, so we can't serve you here." There it was. The mask had slipped. In those few words, Jessica had revealed exactly what this was about. Not security protocols, not banking regulations, just pure, unfiltered prejudice dressed up in corporate speak. Angela felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same sensation she'd experienced countless times throughout her career. That moment when someone underestimates you, dismisses you, reduces your entire existence to a stereotype. Behind Jessica, the staff exchanged knowing glances. Beth looked down, seemingly uncomfortable, her hands fidgeting with a stack of deposit slips that didn't need straightening. Her body language screamed discomfort, but her silence made her complicit all the same. Mark and Richard didn't bother hiding their amusement. Richard actually snickered, covering his mouth with his hand in a poor attempt to conceal his laughter. "I'm curious," Richard chimed in, leaning against the counter with newfound confidence now that his boss was backing him up. His voice carried deliberately, ensuring nearby customers could hear. "Did you come into some money recently? A settlement, perhaps? Or maybe an inheritance? Or maybe you laundered the money?" The implication was crystal clear. In their minds, there was simply no legitimate way a black woman could have access to this kind of money. It had to be some kind of windfall, some stroke of luck, rather than hard work, intelligence, and determination. A white young mother with 2 children had paused her transaction at the next window, openly watching the scene unfolding. She pulled her children closer, whispering something in their ears, teaching them perhaps unconsciously to view Angela as someone suspicious, someone who didn't belong. Angela took a deep breath. Her composure was remarkable given the circumstances. Not a hint of the rage she must have felt showed on her face. "I'd like to speak with someone who can actually help me complete my transaction, please. Someone with the authority to override whatever concerns you seem to have." Every word was carefully chosen, professional, reasonable, giving them no ammunition, no excuse to label her as angry or difficult. "Ma'am, I am the highest authority in this branch. I'm the manager. There's no one else for you to speak with." She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a stage whisper that was still perfectly audible to everyone nearby. The scent of her expensive cologne, likely meant to convey success and authority, wafted across the counter. "Perhaps you might be more comfortable at the check cashing place down the street. They're more accustomed to handling your type of banking needs. You should get maybe $1,000 or $2 there." The dismissal was so blatant, so disrespectful that a collective intake of breath could be heard from customers who were shamelessly eavesdropping on the exchange. Behind the teller windows, the daily operations of the bank continued. The cash counting machines whirred quietly in the background. The security cameras mounted in each corner of the ceiling recorded everything. Every expression, every word, every microaggression playing out in high-definition detail. Angela glanced up at one of those cameras, a flicker of something, perhaps knowledge, crossing her face so briefly that no one noticed. Without another word to Jessica, Angela reached into her purse, a modest leather bag that had been a gift from her team when she was promoted to COO, and pulled out her phone. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, stepping slightly away from the counter while still remaining in full view of everyone. As she dialed, Richard nudged Mark, both of them watching with smirks on their faces. Richard whispered something that made Mark stifle a laugh. Beth, the teller who had first assisted Angela, kept her eyes down, but her discomfort was palpable in the rigid set of her shoulders. Another customer, an older black man in a postal worker's uniform, watched the scene with a resigned expression that spoke volumes. This wasn't surprising to him. This was Tuesday. This was banking while black. "Yes, hello," Angela spoke into the phone, her voice taking on an even more professional tone than before. "This is Angela Freeman calling." Richard mimicked her posture, exaggeratedly standing up straight with his nose in the air, mouthing, "Angela Freeman calling," to Mark, who stifled a laugh. Richard's performance was for the benefit of the entire staff, a show of dominance, of belonging, at Angela's expense. The bank's mission statement was prominently displayed on the wall behind them, building financial success together with trust, respect, and integrity. The words now seemed like a cruel joke in contrast to the scene unfolding beneath them. Jessica stepped forward, patience clearly exhausted. Her polished leather shoes squeaked slightly on the marble floor as she moved, the sound oddly loud in the tension-filled space. "I'm going to have to ask you to conclude your business elsewhere. You're creating a disturbance in our branch. The lower banks out there will be able to serve you, not here." The irony was staggering. The only disturbance was the staff's treatment of a legitimate customer, attempting to access her own funds. But in Jessica's mind, and in the minds of those who shared her biases, Angela's mere presence, her audacity to expect equal service, was itself the disturbance. Angela continued her call as if she hadn't spoken. "Yes, I'm still at the downtown branch. No, they've refused the transaction. Yes, that's correct." Her calm was unsettling to Jessica. People in her position being denied service, being humiliated publicly, were supposed to react in one of two ways: explosive anger that would justify removal, or defeated acceptance that would end in retreat. Angela's composed resistance followed neither script, and it clearly unnerved her. "Ma'am," Jessica's voice rose, the veneer of professionalism cracking further. "If you don't leave the premises immediately, I'll be forced to call security." Angela turned slightly away from her, still speaking clearly into the phone. The bank's large wall clock ticked loudly, marking each second of the standoff. It was 10:17 a.m., a time that would be recorded in numerous termination documents in the hours to come. Jessica signaled to Mark, who reached for the security phone extension. The situation was escalating by the second. Other employees had stopped what they were doing to watch, sensing that something significant was unfolding. That's when Angela turned away from Jessica and spoke her final words into the phone, words that would change everything in the next few moments. "Diane, I need you in the downtown branch now." The name hit Jessica like a physical blow. Diane, as in Diane Porter, head of operations for the entire bank? Angela knew her? Angela had her direct number? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jessica's face, the first crack in her confident facade. Who was this woman, really? How did she have direct access to one of the most senior executives in the company? The question lingered in her mind for only a moment before her arrogance reasserted itself. Probably just name-dropping, she thought. A bluff. People like her always tried to intimidate with claims of knowing important people. Hit the subscribe and like button if you support Angela, the undercover boss in this story. In the headquarter branch, the executive suite of Meridian Financials suddenly burst into activity. Diane Porter stood bolt upright at her desk, her face draining of color as she recognized the voice on the other end of the line and realized who was calling her. Diane had worked alongside Angela for over a decade. They had broken countless glass ceilings together, navigated the treacherous waters of corporate finance as women of color, supported each other through personal and professional challenges. "Get me every customer complaint from the downtown branch for the past year," she barked at her assistant. "Every single one, even the ones that didn't make it into the formal review process." Assistants scattered as she grabbed her tablet and security badge. Her designer heels echoed sharply on the marble floor as she rushed toward the executive elevator, the one that could take her directly to the lobby without stopping. In the adjacent conference room, board members who had been reviewing quarterly projections found themselves suddenly interrupted as security feeds from the downtown branch were pulled up on the main screen. "What's happening?" asked Jonathan Prescott, the chairman of the board, as technicians scrambled to enhance the audio. "You need to see this, sir," replied the head of security, his expression grim. The color drained from Prescott's face as he recognized the woman being mistreated by their staff. That's Angela Freeman," stammered another board member. "That's our CEO," the security director confirmed, "and this has apparently been going on for 17 minutes already." On screen, they could see it all unfolding in real time. The board watched in stunned silence as their CEO was treated with contempt in her own bank. "Record everything," Prescott ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Every second, every word, and get legal up here immediately." Back in the bank lobby, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Jessica began to realize that something was very, very wrong. Unknown to her and her staff, the security cameras had also captured their treatment of other customers throughout the morning. The pattern of discrimination that Angela had witnessed firsthand, every interaction, every disparate treatment, every preferential service, was now preserved as evidence. The same system designed to protect the bank from external threats was about to expose the threat that had been inside all along. Angela Freeman stood perfectly still, phone now returned to her purse, watching as the realization slowly dawned on Jessica Keller's face that she might have just made the biggest mistake of her career. On the 21st floor of Meridian Financial's headquarters, chaos had erupted in the executive suite. The normally quiet observation room where security feeds from all branches were monitored had transformed into a war room in a matter of minutes. "Pull up every angle we have," Diane Porter commanded, her voice tight with controlled fury. The head of operations stood ramrod straight in her tailored navy suit, her usual composed demeanor replaced by an intensity that had her staff moving with unprecedented urgency. "I want audio. I want facial recognition. I want timestamps on everything." The security team scrambled to comply with her directives, fingers flying across keyboards as they pulled up multiple camera views of the downtown branch lobby. Screens filled with different angles of the same humiliating scene. Angela Freeman, their CEO, being treated like a criminal in her own institution. "Camera 3 has the clearest audio," reported a young technician, his face pale as he realized the severity of what they were witnessing. "And we have continuous footage from the moment she entered the branch at 9:15 a.m. In the adjacent boardroom, 3 board members who had been in a quarterly planning meeting watched in stunned silence as the security feeds populated the wall-sized screens. They could see everything: the smirks, the eye rolls, the blatant disrespect, the different treatment of customers based solely on appearance. The pattern was undeniable, and it was playing out in real time before their eyes. "Yes," replied Jonathan Prescott, the board chairman, his expression grim beneath his silver hair. "That's our CEO." The audio feed kicked in just as Jessica Keller was saying, "These check cashing places are really better equipped for your needs," her voice dripping with condescension. The boardroom was filled with her condescending tone. This wasn't just bad customer service. This wasn't just rudeness. This was the systematic discrimination they had all convinced themselves didn't exist in their institution. "This is happening in our Flagship branch," whispered Catherine Reynolds, the third board member present. She didn't need to finish the question. The implication hung in the air. How many other customers face this treatment daily? How many had simply walked away, taking their business elsewhere, never filing complaints, never escalating to management? "Get me everything we have on Jessica Keller," Diane barked at her assistant while gathering her tablet and security badge. Employment history, performance reviews, customer complaints, everything. And call legal. Tell them to meet me downstairs in 15 minutes. As she rushed toward the elevator, Diane scrolled through her tablet, pulling up branch analytics. The downtown branch's performance metrics filled the screen. Impressive at first glance. Top-tier new account generation, strong loan origination numbers, excellent deposit growth. But when she applied filters to disaggregate the data by customer demographics, the true picture emerged. The patterns were undeniable, hidden in plain sight within their own data. Jessica's branch had the highest account rejection rate for minority applicants, the lowest rate of loan approvals for Black business owners, and a customer attrition rate among people of color that was triple the bank's average. How had they missed this? Or had they simply chosen not to see? Back in the branch lobby, tensions were escalating by the second. Jessica had summoned the security guard, a young man named Thomas, who looked deeply uncomfortable with the situation. Barely 25, new to the job, and clearly unprepared for the moral complexity of what he was being asked to do. "I need this woman escorted from the premises," Jessica instructed, not looking at Angela as if she were an object rather than a person. Her voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who had never had her authority questioned within these walls. "She's creating a disturbance and refusing to leave after being denied service." The security guard hesitated, clearly sensing something wasn't right about the situation. His gaze flickered between Jessica, his technical superior, and Angela, whose composure stood in stark contrast to the manager's growing agitation. "Sir," Angela said calmly to the guard, "I have every right to be here. I'm a customer of this bank attempting to access my own funds. I have provided all required identification and have broken no rules or laws." Thomas, the security guard, shifted his weight from one foot to another, clearly conflicted. His training had covered robbery protocols and emergency procedures, but nothing had prepared him for this moral gray area. "Ma'am!" Jessica's face flushed with anger at the guard's hesitation and at being contradicted in front of her staff. "This is a private business, and we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who may be attempting to commit fraud." The accusation hung in the air. Fraud, without evidence, without foundation. Jessica had leveled one of the most serious allegations possible in a banking environment. And yet, to those watching, the true fraud was becoming increasingly apparent. The fraud of equal service, of meritocracy, of fairness. The staff had formed a literal wall behind Jessica. Mark standing with arms crossed, his security badge twisted backward so his name wasn't visible. Richard with a satisfied smirk, twirling a pen between his fingers in a gesture of casual contempt. And even Beth, who had seemed uncomfortable earlier, now standing in solidarity with her colleagues, though her eyes remained fixed on the floor. The message was clear. It was all of them against Angela, a unified front of institutional power, aligned against a single customer whose only crime was expecting to be treated with basic dignity. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Thomas, the security guard, finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "But if the manager says—" He trailed off, unable to meet Angela's gaze. It was clear his internal conflict was losing to the external pressure. He began to move around the counter, a reluctant soldier obeying an unjust command. Angela held his gaze, a silent plea for him to see beyond the uniform, to see her humanity. He hesitated, his hand hovering over her arm, not quite touching her, not quite daring to physically remove her. It was a standoff, not between a customer and a bank, but between decency and blind obedience. "Did you run my ID?" Angela asked, her voice cutting through the tension. "Did you verify my account balance? Did you do anything other than make assumptions based on how I look?" Jessica bristled. "We don't need to verify anything for someone who clearly doesn't belong here." The lie hung in the air, blatant and indefensible. The entire purpose of banking security protocols was verification. By refusing to verify, Jessica had not only violated company policy, but had publicly revealed the true nature of her refusal: pure, unadulterated prejudice. Just as Thomas, the security guard, took a hesitant step closer to Angela, the polished glass doors of the bank swung open, and Diane Porter strode into the lobby. She moved with an undeniable aura of authority, her power suit and determined expression cutting through the tension like a laser beam. The hushed whispers of the staff died down entirely as she approached, her eyes scanning the room, landing finally on Angela, then on Jessica, then back on Angela, her gaze settling with a look of fierce protectiveness. "Jessica!" Diane's voice, though not a shout, carried the weight of absolute authority. It echoed off the marble walls, silencing every conversation, every murmur. The entire branch froze. Jessica Keller, who had been so arrogant moments before, visibly paled. Her practiced smile melted away, replaced by a look of sheer terror. "Diane, ma'am, I didn't expect you," she stammered, her voice suddenly small and shaky. "Apparently not," Diane retorted, her eyes narrowed. "What is going on here, Jessica? And why is our CEO being treated like this?" The words hung in the air, shattering the illusion. "Our CEO?" A collective gasp rippled through the staff. Mark and Richard's smirks vanished instantly, replaced by expressions of utter horror. Beth, the teller, dropped the deposit slip she was holding, their soft thud echoing in the sudden silence. The white mother who had been whispering to her children now looked utterly mortified, pulling her children closer, but this time in shame, not suspicion. Thomas, the security guard, simply froze, his hand still hovering in midair, caught in the act. Jessica's face drained of all color, turning ashen. "CEO? But I thought... She said she was just a customer. She was trying to make a large withdrawal without proper identification. We suspected fraud." The words tumbled out, a desperate, pathetic attempt to justify her actions, a last-ditch effort to rewrite the narrative. But the words were too late, the performance too transparent. Diane simply raised an eyebrow, a silent command for Jessica to continue digging her own grave. "Fraud, Jessica?" Diane's voice was dangerously quiet now. "The woman standing before you is Angela Freeman, CEO of Meridian Financial. And every single moment of this, every condescending word, every false accusation, every act of discrimination, has been recorded by our security cameras. It's all on tape, Jessica." The revelation landed like a thunderclap. The staff's faces went from shock to pure dread. The very cameras they had ignored, the ones they had assumed were mere background, had been silently documenting their every transgression. Angela stepped forward, her calm demeanor now imbued with an undeniable power. "Beth," she said, her voice clear and firm, "pull up my account. Show them the balance. Show them my transaction history." Beth, still trembling, immediately turned to her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a speed born of pure terror. Within seconds, a screen filled with numbers and transaction logs appeared, confirming Angela's substantial holdings, her long history with the bank, her impeccable financial record. The evidence was undeniable. Diane turned back to Jessica, her face a mask of cold fury. "Jessica Keller, effective immediately, your employment with Meridian Financial is terminated. You are to collect your personal belongings and leave the premises, escorted by security. You will not be allowed back on any Meridian Financial property." The words were delivered with surgical precision, leaving no room for argument, no possibility of appeal. Jessica's jaw dropped. She looked around at her stunned staff, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "Mark, Richard," Diane continued, her gaze sweeping over the two men who had been so quick to mock and conspire. "Your actions today demonstrate a complete disregard for our core values and a blatant disregard for our customers. You are both suspended indefinitely pending a full investigation. Report to HR first thing tomorrow morning." Their faces, previously smug, were now pale and horrified. Thomas, the security guard, visibly relaxed, a wave of relief washing over him as he realized he wouldn't have to choose between his conscience and his job. He stepped forward to escort Jessica Keller, who was now a shell of her former arrogant self, out of the bank. The once proud manager was led away, her head down, a public spectacle of poetic justice. The remaining staff stood in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of fear, shock, and dawning comprehension. The air in the lobby was thick with unspoken questions. No one spoke. No one moved. The sound of Jessica Keller's heels clicking away, escorted by the silent security guard, was the only thing breaking the profound silence. Diane Porter surveyed the room, her gaze piercing, making eye contact with every single employee. "This," she said, her voice clear and strong, "is what happens when you forget our mission. This is what happens when you forget who you work for and who you are supposed to serve." She turned to Angela. "Angela, are you all right?" Angela nodded, a small, weary smile on her face. "I'm fine, Diane. Just a little exposed." Diane's expression softened briefly, then hardened again as she turned back to the remaining staff. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. No one, absolutely no one, is above scrutiny. Our policies are clear. Every customer deserves respect, dignity, and fair service. Any deviation from that will be met with the swiftest and most severe consequences." Her eyes lingered on Beth, the young teller, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. "Beth," Diane said, her voice firm but lacking the same harshness she'd used for the others. "You seemed uncomfortable throughout this ordeal. You didn't actively participate in the disrespect, but your silence allowed it to continue. Do you have anything to say?" Beth's head shot up, her eyes wide with fear and a glimmer of hope. I knew it was wrong, ma'am. I was scared. Jessica, she runs this branch with an iron fist. And Mark and Richard, they're always..." She trailed off, unable to fully articulate the toxic environment. Angela stepped forward, her hand gently touching Beth's arm. "Beth, I saw your discomfort. I also saw your hesitation. But discomfort is not enough. Inaction is complicity. Today you have a choice. Do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution?" Beth looked at Angela, then at Diane, a newfound resolve hardening her features. "The solution, ma'am. I want to be part of the solution. I know I messed up, but I want to make it right." Diane nodded slowly. "Good. Because as of this moment, Beth, you are the interim branch manager. Your first task is to ensure every customer in this lobby is served with the respect and efficiency they deserve." A wave of shock rippled through the remaining staff. "Interim manager? Beth, the junior teller?" Beth, however, simply nodded, taking a deep breath and walking to the head of the counter, a newfound confidence in her posture. "All right, everyone," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Let's clear this lobby. Customer 102, next please." The bank, which had been frozen in time, slowly began to hum back to life, though the air was still thick with the residue of the dramatic events. Angela and Diane watched for a few moments, observing Beth as she began to direct traffic, her initial fear slowly giving way to a nascent sense of authority. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, the boardroom was alive with a different kind of tension. Jonathan Prescott, the chairman, stood at the head of the table, his face etched with fury. The security footage of the incident continued to loop silently on the large screen, a damning visual record. "This is a crisis," he stated, his voice barely controlled. "A catastrophic failure of leadership and a direct contradiction of everything we claim to stand for. This isn't just about one branch manager. This is about our culture. This is about what we've allowed to fester under our noses." Another board member, Catherine Reynolds, spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "How could we have missed this? The data, the reports, they never showed this level of systemic bias." Diane Porter, having just arrived from the branch, walked in, her tablet still in her hand. "Because you weren't looking for it, Catherine," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Or you chose to believe the surface numbers. I've pulled the disaggregated data from Jessica Keller's branch. The patterns of discrimination have been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Higher loan rejections for minorities, higher account closures, lower satisfaction scores among customers of color, all buried beneath impressive overall figures. She projected a series of charts and graphs onto the screen, showing the undeniable disparities in service and outcomes. "This isn't just Jessica Keller," Diane continued, her voice unwavering. "This is an institutional problem. This is about biases, both conscious and unconscious, that have become embedded in our practices, our training, our very culture. And it is costing us not just our reputation, but real customers and real opportunities. We need to issue a statement immediately," one board member urged, "a public apology, and a clear plan of action." Prescott nodded. "Absolutely, but it won't be just a statement. Angela will address this personally. This is her bank now, and she will set the tone. Get our PR team in here. Get our legal team. We need a comprehensive strategy, not just damage control. This needs to be a turning point." The board members, chastened and awakened to the uncomfortable truth, began to strategize, their previous complacent attitudes replaced by a newfound urgency. News of the incident at Meridian Financial's Flagship branch, fueled by leaks from within, and a few brave customers who had witnessed the exchange, began to ripple through social media and then into traditional news outlets. "CEO goes undercover, exposes discrimination at her own bank," screamed a headline on a major financial news site. Local news stations dispatched reporters to the downtown branch, eager to capture the reactions of stunned employees and bewildered customers. The story quickly went national, turning Angela Freeman into an unexpected symbol of corporate accountability and the fight against racial bias. Angela, however, was not interested in becoming a symbol. She was interested in fundamental change. After a long meeting with Diane and the board, a strategic plan began to take shape. It wasn't just about firing a few bad apples. It was about overhauling the entire system. From top to bottom, Meridian Financial would be restructured to ensure that the words trust, respect, and integrity on their mission statement were not just decorative, but truly reflective of their practices. Her experience as the undercover CEO was not just a humiliating incident, it was a catalyst for a new era of banking. In the downtown branch, Beth, the interim manager, had truly blossomed. Under Angela's direct mentorship, she had embraced her new role with enthusiasm and a fierce commitment to fairness. She had reorganized staff schedules, implemented weekly sensitivity training sessions, and personally greeted every single customer who walked through the door. Her branch's customer satisfaction scores, particularly among minority customers, had skyrocketed. When Angela visited, disguised again, Beth didn't recognize her, but greeted her with the same genuine warmth and respect she showed everyone. This time, Angela completed her $15,000 withdrawal with ease, Beth even offering her a cup of coffee while she waited. Angela's public address at the press conference, held just days after the incident, stunned the financial world. Flanked by a visibly chastened board of directors and a grim-faced Diane Porter, Angela stood at the podium not to make excuses, but to issue a profound apology. "What happened at our downtown branch was unacceptable," she stated, her voice resonating with both sorrow and resolve. "It was a direct violation of our values, and it reflects a deeper systemic issue that we, as an institution, must confront. To Ms. Freeman, who experienced this directly, and to every customer who has ever felt diminished or disrespected by Meridian Financial, I offer my deepest, most sincere apologies." Her admission of discriminatory practices by a major financial institution was unprecedented. Analysts and media commentators were agog. No CEO had ever been so transparent about such a sensitive issue. But Angela didn't stop there. She didn't just admit the problem. She laid out concrete, measurable commitments to address it. She announced the immediate implementation of a new fair banking initiative that would overhaul every aspect of their operations, from hiring to lending to customer service. In the weeks and months that followed, Angela Freeman became the face of corporate accountability in America. Her unwavering implementation of the promised changes from revised hiring practices to overhauled performance metrics to community investment programs demonstrated that her commitment went far beyond damage control. Branch managers found their bonuses tied to equity metrics alongside traditional performance indicators. Anonymous customer experience surveys were disaggregated by demographic data to identify disparities. Training programs were redesigned with input from civil rights organizations and banking regulators. And in every Meridian branch, a new sign appeared inside the teller: Windows. All customers deserve respect, dignity, and fair service. If your experience does not reflect these values, please call this number below. Below the message, in bold, clear type, was Angela Freeman's direct office line. It was a bold move, an open invitation for customers to report any misconduct directly to the top, signaling an unprecedented level of transparency and accountability. 6 months after the incident that transformed Meridian Financial, Angela once again donned casual clothing and visited branches unannounced. But this time, her purpose wasn't to expose discrimination. It was to witness the changes taking root throughout the organization. She observed tellers warmly greeting customers of all backgrounds, managers actively engaging with diverse communities, and a palpable shift in the atmosphere, from one of underlying tension to one of genuine welcoming. The story of Angela Freeman and Meridian Financial sent ripples throughout the banking industry. Other financial institutions, fearing similar public exposures and the potential for regulatory action, began to review their own practices, quietly implementing diversity and inclusion initiatives. The once whispered concerns about bias were now openly discussed in boardrooms and training seminars. Angela's courage had not only transformed her own company, but had set a new, higher standard for responsible and equitable banking across the nation. The phrase "respect first," originally a call to action from Angela's initial Undercover video, became a rallying cry. It transcended the banking world, becoming a hashtag and a movement on social media, advocating for basic human dignity and fair treatment in all sectors. People shared their own stories of discrimination, inspired by Angela's bravery to speak up and demand better. The story became a powerful reminder that true leadership isn't just about profits, but about principles. Angela Freeman's journey from a teller trainee to a CEO who exposed and then dismantled systemic discrimination within her own company became a powerful case study in ethical leadership. Her story was taught in business schools, analyzed by sociologists, and celebrated by civil rights advocates. She didn't just fix a problem. She transformed an institution, leaving a lasting legacy that extended far beyond the balance sheets of Meridian Financial, proving that courage, integrity, and a commitment to justice could indeed change the world, one bank, one customer, at a time. The story of Angela Freeman and Meridian Financial also served as a stark reminder to the corporate world that discrimination wasn't just a moral failing, it was a business liability. The initial fallout from the incident had indeed hit Meridian's stock price, and the brand image had taken a temporary blow. However, as Angela's reforms took hold and the company demonstrably committed to fairness, public trust began to return, and with it, a new wave of customers who valued the bank's ethical stance. They discovered that by doing the right thing, they also did right by their bottom line. Meridian Financial's commitment to equity became a competitive advantage. It attracted top talent who sought to work for a company with strong values, and it resonated with a growing segment of consumers who actively sought out businesses that aligned with their social conscience. Angela Freeman proved that diversity and inclusion could be more than just buzzwords. They could be the foundation of a successful, modern enterprise. The young white mother who had been a silent, judgmental observer during the incident at the bank branch later wrote a powerful open letter to Angela Freeman, published in a local newspaper. She expressed her deep regret and shame for her complicity in the moment, for allowing her children to witness prejudice, and for failing to speak up. Her letter became a testament to the ripple effect of Angela's actions, demonstrating how individual acts of courage could inspire personal reflection and broader societal change. Beth, the interim branch manager, continued to excel in her role. Her humility, combined with her newfound confidence and genuine commitment to fair service, made her a natural leader. Under Angela's continued mentorship, Beth was eventually promoted to a regional management position, overseeing multiple branches and ensuring that the respect-first philosophy was deeply embedded throughout their operations. Her journey from fearful teller to a rising star within the company was a powerful testament to the transformative power of Angela's leadership. As for Mark and Richard, the senior tellers who had actively participated in the humiliation, their investigations led to their permanent dismissal from Meridian Financial. Their actions served as a cautionary tale within the company, reinforcing the message that prejudice would not be tolerated. Their careers in banking were effectively over, a direct consequence of their discriminatory behavior. The incident marked the end of an era of complacency and hidden bias at Meridian Financial. It ushered in a new era of transparency, accountability, and genuine commitment to serving all. Angela Freeman, the Black CEO who went undercover, didn't just expose a problem. She ignited a revolution within her company, proving that true leadership meant confronting uncomfortable truths and building a better, fairer future for everyone. That's today's story from the Black Narrative. If it moved you or opened your eyes, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And most importantly, subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Until next time, stay strong, stay loud, and stay part of the narrative.